Amber Lewis and Mark Dalton never imagined that one night would change everything. Amber, a 19-year-old with a sharp mind and dangerous confidence, thought she could outsmart the police. Mark, her unsuspecting boss, was about to become the center of a crime that would shock their quiet town. What started as a routine evening at the diner quickly spiraled into a chilling game of deception, manipulation, and a deadly mistake that would expose Amber's dangerous arrogance. Amber Lewis was 19, confident and restless. She had grown up in the small, quiet town of Brookhaven where nothing ever seemed to change. Most people there knew each other's routines. Gossip traveled faster than news, and life followed a predictable rhythm. But Amber hated predictability. She wanted excitement, something that would make her stand out. She often said she wasn't like everyone else, that she could do anything she set her mind to. At the diner where she worked part-time, she was known for her sharp mind, quick wit, and the kind of boldness that made people either admire or fear her. What no one realized was how much she loved testing limits, especially when it came to rules. Amber spent her evenings watching documentaries about real criminals. She wasn't interested in the tragedy or morality of those stories. She was fascinated by how close some people came to escaping justice. She would pause the screen, analyzing what went wrong for them, and make mental notes of what she would have done differently. To her, it was a game, one she believed she could win. Friends laughed when she said she could pull off the perfect crime, but her tone was never entirely joking. Beneath her confident words was a growing obsession with control and power. Her boss at the diner, Mark Dalton, was one of the few people who ever challenged her attitude. He was older, patient, and tried to keep Amber focused on her job. But she didn't like being told what to do. Their arguments were quiet but tense, always about responsibility, money, or Amber's tendency to cut corners. To everyone else, they seemed like harmless workplace disagreements. Yet to Amber, Mark represented the kind of authority she despised. She didn't know it then, but that frustration would soon turn into something far darker. On the last Friday of August, the diner stayed open late for a local event. By midnight, only Amber and Mark were left to close up. The night was humid, the parking lot silent except for the buzz of streetlights. Neighbors later recalled seeing Mark's truck still parked outside, but no one saw what happened after that. The next morning, the truck was found near the edge of the river with its door wide open and the keys still dangling from the ignition. Mark was gone. The police arrived quickly, but the scene was strange. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints leading away from the water, and no evidence suggesting robbery. When officers questioned Amber, she appeared calm and cooperative. She said Mark had finished counting the cash, locked up, and left before her. She claimed she stayed behind to clean and went straight home afterward. Her story sounded ordinary. Too ordinary. Her eyes didn't show fear or confusion, only the careful calm of someone who had prepared their words in advance. That morning, while volunteers searched the riverbanks, Amber returned to the diner as if nothing had happened. She smiled, poured coffee for regulars, and answered questions with just the right mix of sadness and composure. To everyone watching, she looked like a loyal employee shocked by her boss's disappearance. But to the detective observing her closely, something about her composure felt wrong. It wasn't grief, it was control. In the days that followed Mark Dalton's disappearance, Amber Lewis became the center of attention in Brookhaven. Her calm composure drew people in, and her apparent concern made her seem trustworthy. She participated in every search party, checked in with authorities, and posted messages on social media, urging anyone with information to come forward. Locals saw her as a grieving young woman determined to help, and her presence reassured them during a tense time. To most, Amber was innocent, the face of worry and compassion. But beneath her carefully maintained exterior, she was calculating every step, ensuring that she appeared cooperative while controlling the narrative. Amber had already anticipated the questions the police might ask. She knew exactly what to say, what to omit, and how to react to scrutiny. Each answer was measured, designed to cast doubt on any suspicion while appearing helpful. She even suggested leads that seemed plausible but were ultimately dead ends, carefully guiding the investigation away from herself. The police initially praised her for her cooperation, noting that most people under stress would panic or become erratic. Amber, however, never faltered. She smiled at interviews, waved to search volunteers, and even cried at times, though the tears were always perfectly timed. Despite her outward confidence, the investigation was slowly closing in. Detective Harris, the lead investigator, noticed inconsistencies in Amber's story. Her account of her evening didn't match the diner's security log entirely, and some co-workers mentioned seeing her leave briefly while claiming she had stayed behind. Harris didn't act immediately. He knew that someone clever and manipulative often relied on the arrogance that they were smarter than everyone else. He decided to observe quietly, collecting small details that could later form a complete picture. Amber's own actions reflected her growing sense of invincibility. She deleted files from the diner's security system and manipulated schedules so that she appeared to be working at times when there were no witnesses. She created subtle distractions, planting rumors of a hitchhiker seen near the diner that night. She even left false traces suggesting Mark had walked away voluntarily. Every move was deliberate, calculated to make the case appear unsolvable. She believed she was untouchable, that her intelligence and charm would shield her from scrutiny. Yet her confidence masked a few cracks. She had been too bold in trying to control the evidence. When police checked her phone records, they noticed a gap. 3 hours on the night Mark vanished, during which her phone was turned off. Amber insisted it had simply died, but Harris filed the detail away. Small inconsistencies like this were what would eventually form the threads of a case against her. Meanwhile, the community remained unaware, swept up in Amber's performance of concern and composure. Even her closest friends didn't suspect her. They admired her bravery and intelligence, completely oblivious to the meticulous planning happening behind the scenes. Amber moved among the townspeople with a confidence that seemed unshakable. She offered assistance to everyone involved, ensured she was seen at all the right places, and subtly controlled conversations about the disappearance. Every action reinforced the illusion of innocence. Yet, Detective Harris remained patient, quietly connecting the dots that Amber thought were invisible. Her arrogance, her belief in her own superiority, was beginning to be her undoing, even though she had no idea the net was slowly tightening around her. A week after Mark Dalton vanished, a new development sent shockwaves through the investigation. A fisherman, casting his line near the river's edge, discovered a small, muddy duffel bag hidden among reeds and debris. Inside were items that immediately caught the police's attention: Mark's watch, blood-stained rags, and a receipt from a nearby gas station, time-stamped the same night he disappeared. The evidence suggested that something had gone terribly wrong, and the authorities began to focus on reconstructing the timeline of events more precisely. The gas station footage showed a dark sedan arriving around midnight. The driver was hooded, the grainy camera unable to reveal a clear face, but the shape and movements of the figure suggested it was a young woman. The police began tracing dark sedans registered in the area, ultimately landing on Amber Lewis. When questioned, she remained calm, repeating her story that she had been home asleep, and insisted she had nothing to do with the discovery. Her cool demeanor convinced some officers that she was innocent, though Detective Harris felt differently. He noticed subtle signs of anxiety, almost imperceptible shifts in her posture and gaze that hinted at secrets. Amber's confidence remained remarkable, but her meticulous planning began to show cracks. Her attempts to manipulate evidence, delete footage, and plant false leads could only go so far. When police examined her car, they found a faint scratch on the driver's side door. Laboratory testing revealed traces of blood, later confirmed as Mark Dalton's. Amber dismissed the finding, claiming it could have come from a minor accident weeks prior. Her explanation sounded plausible, and for a moment the investigation seemed stuck. Amber believed she had successfully covered her tracks. Yet the traffic camera, located a few miles from the diner, recorded events she had not anticipated. Though it had been under maintenance, technicians managed to recover footage from the night Mark disappeared. The video showed a car speeding away from the direction of the river just before 1 a.m., the license plate matching Amber's sedan. This was the breakthrough investigators needed. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but combined with the blood evidence and the duffel bag discovery, it painted a troubling picture. Amber's careful planning had overlooked a single surveillance camera, and now the timeline of her actions became undeniable. Police brought Amber in for questioning once again. She remained calm at first, explaining every detail of her evening, repeating her alibi that she had been home. However, when asked about the traffic camera footage, her composure faltered. She stammered, offered excuses, and began providing details she hadn't previously mentioned. Detective Harris observed her closely, noting the nervous tics she had successfully hidden during earlier interviews. Her confidence, the very trait that had allowed her to manipulate others, now betrayed her. With every passing hour, the puzzle pieces began to converge. The duffel bag by the river, the blood in her car, the gas station receipt, and the recovered traffic footage formed a chain that was difficult to refute. Amber had thought herself untouchable, above suspicion, but her arrogance had led her to make critical errors. The law, patient and methodical, was closing in. She had crafted the illusion of innocence too well, but reality had a way of catching up, and the first threads of her unraveling were beginning to show in ways she could no longer control. 2 weeks after Mark Dalton's disappearance, the investigation reached a turning point. The traffic camera footage recovered from the road near the river was reviewed in detail, and the frames showed Amber's dark sedan speeding away from the riverbank at 12:47 a.m. on the night of the incident. The plate number matched her car perfectly. While the footage did not show her face clearly, the car alone was enough to place her at the scene. The detective assigned to the case, Harris, knew that Amber had made a mistake. She had counted on the camera being offline, but even a brief glimpse from a single lens could unravel weeks of careful planning. Police began a thorough search of Amber's vehicle. They found river mud on the floor mats, distinct from the dirt typically found around Brookhaven, and consistent with the location where the duffel bag had been discovered. Small fibers embedded in the carpet matched the fabric from the rags in the bag. Amber explained it away, saying the mud had come from walking through a puddle the week prior while carrying groceries. Every explanation sounded plausible on the surface, but Harris could sense hesitation in her voice and the subtle tightness in her shoulders. The small cracks in her story were widening. Officers obtained a warrant to search Amber's apartment. The search revealed a shoebox hidden under her bed, containing Mark's missing keychain. Amber claimed she had kept it as a memento, insisting she had sentimental attachment and had not realized it might look suspicious. She maintained a calm front, but the discovery contradicted her previous statements about her interactions with Mark's belongings. Every object found in her possession now created a direct link to the missing man. Detective Harris continued to analyze the timeline. He cross-referenced Amber's phone records, security camera footage, and witness statements. The 3-hour gap, when her phone was switched off now, became more suspicious in the context of the physical evidence. While she insisted the phone had died, the timing corresponded perfectly with the estimated time of Mark's disappearance. Harris considered the possibility that Amber had orchestrated the entire event to appear normal while committing a crime. Each small inconsistency built a case that painted a picture of careful planning, yet also of overconfidence. Amber remained outwardly composed but started to show signs of stress. When questioned about the mud and fibers, she spoke faster than usual, offering explanations that conflicted with her earlier statements. Her attempts to manipulate the narrative began to unravel as the detective presented incontrovertible evidence. He did not need to pressure her aggressively. The facts themselves were unrelenting. Each detail, from the traffic footage to the keychain, created a chain that became impossible to dispute. Amber, who had believed herself untouchable, realized that every calculated move she had made now worked against her. The investigation closed in further as Harris reviewed all collected evidence. Amber's carefully constructed facade of innocence was no longer convincing. The combination of physical evidence, surveillance footage, and minor inconsistencies formed a net from which she could not escape. She had relied on her intelligence, charm, and ability to manipulate others, but in doing so, she had overlooked a single thread, a thread that now threatened to unravel everything she had carefully orchestrated. Her belief in her own superiority had blinded her to the persistence of the law and the inevitability of discovery. After weeks of careful investigation, Amber Lewis was summoned to the police station for what the detectives called a final clarification. The atmosphere in the interrogation room was calm, almost casual, but hidden cameras recorded every movement and reaction. Amber walked in with her usual confidence, her posture straight, her expression composed. She believed she could maintain her facade, that her charm and intelligence would protect her one last time. She was unaware that every piece of evidence collected over the past weeks had formed an unbreakable chain, and the detectives needed only to let her reveal her own guilt. At first, she answered questions, as she always had, calmly repeating her story and insisting she had been home the night Mark vanished. Detective Harris began to present the case methodically, mentioning the duffel bag, the blood traces in her car, the river mud on her mats, and the traffic camera footage. Amber listened, nodding and smiling, trying to appear cooperative. When Harris referred to the recovered traffic footage showing her car speeding away from the river at 12:47 a.m., her composure wavered for the first time. She opened her mouth to explain, but the words came too fast, too rehearsed, and contradicting details began to slip out. Harris watched as Amber's confidence crumbled. She tried to justify every piece of evidence, offering explanations that sounded plausible in isolation, but impossible when considered together. She spoke about seeing puddles on the street, carrying Mark's keychain for safekeeping, and misremembering times. Her voice grew anxious, her hands fidgeted, and her eyes darted toward the door repeatedly. Every nervous movement revealed cracks in the carefully constructed mask she had worn for weeks. What had once seemed like control was now panic, and Detective Harris remained silent, allowing her words to betray her. Amber's overconfidence, her belief that she was smarter than everyone around her, had led her to underestimate the patience and diligence of the investigation. Each lie she told, in an attempt to confuse the detectives, only drew more attention to inconsistencies. Her attempts to manipulate the conversation revealed knowledge only the perpetrator could have, confirming suspicions without additional proof. She spoke of details regarding the river, the duffel bag, and Mark's last known movements, information she had previously concealed. Every explanation she offered undermined her credibility further, exposing the truth through the very fear she tried to hide. Within minutes, the detectives had enough. Amber's performance, which had fooled friends, neighbors, and co-workers, could no longer hold under scrutiny. She was formally charged with second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. The evidence, her own statements, and her inability to maintain composure had sealed her fate. Amber, who had imagined herself clever, invincible, and untouchable, realized the reality of her situation as handcuffs were placed on her wrists. As she was led away, the facade of confidence that had defined her for weeks fell entirely. The carefully orchestrated illusion of innocence, built from manipulation and deception, had collapsed. Amber had spent months believing she could outsmart the law, but her pride, her arrogance, and her misjudgment of human diligence had undone her. In the end, it was not a missing witness, a lack of evidence, or a lucky break that caught her. It was her own inability to accept that intelligence alone could not triumph over truth. Every calculated move, every clever distraction had been seen, recorded, and analyzed. Amber had thought she was untouchable, but the law had waited, patient and inevitable, until the moment she revealed herself.